Hello everybody, I hope you're doing well. We are going to spend a little bit of time going over chapter 15, which is guiding social behaviors. This video should not be longer than about 10 minutes. I'm going to try to hold your attention but still explain things to where you get the basic idea. Keep in mind that in this class you're only going to get the overview of everything we've talked about. Just like all the other domains, you're only going to get a little bit of overview about how we guide children's behavior. You're going to get the in-depth learning in CHD 205. So don't feel like you have to know everything. Okay? So let's go ahead and get started. Alright, some important definitions you'll find in the book is guidance and discipline. Alright? Guidance means that we're directing a child to kind of where we want them. Okay? We're taking them from where they're at and saying, we're going to get here. Or we're going to go here. Or maybe even here. So for instance, let's say we've got toddlers that keep trying to pour their own milk. Well, they're not going to learn how to pour their milk unless we help direct them to it. So what we might do is say, put our hands over their hands and help them pour it. Or talk them through it and say, here, hold your hand on the handle. Now go slowly and make the part of the measuring cup touch your cup. We'll guide them. We'll show them how to do it instead of just expect them to do it. That is guidance. We're showing them how to do a particular thing. Okay, discipline comes in when there's kind of a negative, there's a behavior we don't want. Okay, so guidance happens all the time, whether it's a good behavior, bad behavior, but discipline happens when there's a misbehavior and we want them to start behaving. That's when we say, okay, you're doing one thing, let me show you what to do instead. So it's the same model as we have over here. Same thing as over here. But now we're going from a negative, we don't want you to do it, to a positive, we do. So a child might be pushing our friend over here, and we want to discipline them and show them what we want them to do instead. So what we'll do is say, I see that you're mad with your friend. So instead of pushing him, what else can we do, i.e. all these different ways to go, to make them stop doing what they're doing? So we give them ideas. We say, well, we could use our words and say, I don't like it when you do that. Or we could play with a different friend. So what we do is we take them from this negative behavior right here, and we give them ways to get to the positive ones. The only difference between guidance and discipline is that guidance happens all the time and discipline is a reaction to just misbehavior. Okay? Positive discipline comes in where we help them make good choices. We don't just tell them what to do. For instance, positive discipline might be to tell a child what we want them to do rather than what not to do. For instance, it's a lot more effective to say, please walk, instead of stop running inside, if that makes sense. Now I want to mention one more thing that's not in the book, and that's punishment. Okay? Now over here we had our guidance and discipline. That says we're going to go one way, and we're going to give you somewhere to go with that behavior. We're going to give you a positive place to go with that. Okay? What punishment is it does this. It takes their behavior and just stops it. Okay? An example of this is timeout. When a child does something wrong and they're put in timeout, they're not being taught what the right thing to do is. They stop doing whatever they're doing because they're in timeout. It's just like the example I gave in class. If I'm speeding along the highway and somebody just pulls me over and says, hey, you're speeding, and then they put me in jail for a few days and let me go, that's not really teaching me the right thing, is it? It's just stopping my behavior for a few days. Okay, so punishment and discipline are different. Discipline and guidance are good. Punishment does not offer any teaching. It just stops the behavior. So keep that in mind. Punishment is not where we want to go. Alright, we want to guide and discipline. Okay, so So let's move on. And if you want to watch the video, this is a really great video. You can do that through the actual PowerPoint, not through this link. Moving on. In the book, you'll read about Dreiker's list of why children act up. Now, try to remember in class when I said that every child is like a flower. And what we see, of course, is the petals. We see their behavior, that they're well-mannered, that they're happy, that they get along well. I'll just say get along. Or that they're quote-unquote bad, or they act up. What we really need to be looking at is down here. We need to be looking at the roots. Why are they well behaved? Why are they not listening? Why are they taking toys? And that is where this comes into play. Dreiker tells us there's 4 underlying reasons for why children misbehave. The first one right here is attention. They want you to just look at them and give them attention. You might notice a child acting up at circle time. That's often because they just want you to look at them. That is what children do. Okay, another one is power. Maybe at home they're used to getting their own way, and at school they want the same. So they act out to show you that they want to be the boss. They act out because they want the power. Okay, and none of these are bad, but these are things that we have to understand so we can fulfill them. Again, children also act out trying to get revenge. Say somebody knocks over their block tower and they want to get back at them. That is a natural cause. So what our job with all of these is to find out what the root is and then how we could fulfill that root in a good way. Okay, so lastly, we have inadequacy. Say you're doing a small group lesson at the table and it's an art project. Maybe in the art project you have to cut things. Well, we have a little girl over here that's cutting her hair, the table, her clothes, everything except the paper. Well, it might not be because she's just wanting attention. She might just not know how to cut. So it's very important to understand these roots over here so we know how to address them. Okay? So if a child, let's go back to attention. If a child is wanting attention, how do we address that? How do we fix that problem? We give them attention. When they do things good, we say, I really like the way you're sitting on your bottom. Or I really love the way you're keeping your hands to yourself. You are such a big boy. We don't give them attention when they're doing bad things, but we give them attention when they're doing good things, which fulfills their need and touches this root right here. These roots are so important. Think about it, it's just like a flower. If the water doesn't get down here to the roots, then this flower up here is dead. Just like if we don't address the roots of why children misbehave, they're going to wilt up here and their behavior is going to show it. Okay, another example, power. Say a child wants power. That doesn't mean that we have to let them run us over in the classroom and be the boss, but that means we give them opportunity, like being the classroom helper. I remember one time I had a 4.5-year-old who was totally outgrown from my class. He was so ready for kindergarten, and he just acted out all the time. He wasn't a bad kid, but he was just wanting some form of power and control. So I know some days that I would just say, hey AJ, you want to rearrange the classroom for me? And I just let him start moving around furniture. You might think that's kind of crazy, but why not, right? Alright, so let's move on. But wait, before we do that, one thing I want you to notice, and you will see this on your exam. This sentence right here. Oop. This is important. You cannot change a child's flower until you water the roots. That's basically what we're saying here. You cannot change the child's misbehavior without figuring out why, the goals that motivate their behavior. Why are they doing it? So this right here, this is a really pretty version of what I'm looking for. But if you can tell me that as long as you understand why the child misbehaves, then you can find out the root of their behavior, that's what I'm looking for. Alright, so let's move on. All right. This gives you a little information on how you can actually do these things that I'm talking about. All right? So next we're going to talk about Gordon's teacher effectiveness. How can you effectively work with your students? And again, this is just an overview. All right, first we have active listening. We see this a lot in our grown-up life. A lot of people just kind of hear us. They don't listen. Active listening is repeating back what they say, showing that you understand what children say. So if we walk up to a kid that's crying and we say, oh, we don't just say, what's wrong? We say, I see that you're really upset. You're sad. What made you sad? And then the child tells us, we say, oh, that must have made you really frustrating when so-and-so took your block. We say back to them what they're saying with us, which helps them understand their problem. Because remember, they're still learning how to regulate their feelings and understand them. Okay? Another part of this is an I message. This is simply saying what you see and feel. So for instance, let's say one of the children in your class just got done coloring a masterpiece on the table. And they're 4, so they know better. So you start your sentence with, with I. I feel really angry when you color on my table. That takes a lot of time to get that out. Okay? So you're telling them how you feel about what they did. And as you can imagine, a you message is the exact opposite. You did this. We're letting them know their actions and the consequences of it. All right? By doing this, what we're doing is identifying the behaviors that they do, the ones that are acceptable and which are not. So we're telling them what they're doing and why it's not acceptable or why it is. Think about growing up when your parents said something, for instance, you have a curfew of 8 o'clock. What we always want to know as kids is what? Why? Why? Same thing with young children. We have to tell them why. It's important for them to understand the behavior we're trying to get out of them. And also by doing this, they own the problem. They see, is this my fault or is this somebody else's? And that is important. Think about how many adults in this life try to put their problems on other people and blame it on the world. We want to train our children to own the problems that they face. All right, let's move on. You guys are doing good, and this isn't too fast. But all right, behavior management is exactly what it sounds like. It is managing a child's behavior, okay? What that means is it focuses on observable traits. That means we are managing their behavior by what we see, not what we assume. It is not okay to say, he must just get what he wants at home. Okay? We can think that, but that is not observable. Observable is he hits. He takes toys. She bites. What is not observable is she bites because she just doesn't know how to use her words. Okay? We focus on what we can actually observe. All right? The most widely used form of behavior management is what we call positive reinforcement. That is simply reinforcing things that children do that we want them to do. For instance, what I was talking about with circle time. When a child that typically acts up at circle time sits down the way he's supposed to, even if it's for 45 seconds, we reinforce that. We say, wow, I really love the way you're sitting down. Or if a child is biting, we say, you haven't bit any of your friends all day. I'm so excited. That makes Miss Jeannie very happy. We reinforce what we want. And as you know, that works in adulthood too. Okay? One of the biggest things I learned in grad school was that you can make anybody do what you want them to do if you make them want to do it. Anybody will do what you want if you make them want to do it. So by reinforcing here, we make them want to do it. All right? There's also a form to eliminate behaviors, and that's ignoring. Now, ignoring behavior isn't always bad. Of course, we always want to look out for safety. We always keep kind of half an eye on things. But generally, when a kid is doing something that we don't like, we just ignore it. So they see that that's not going to get our attention. But yet, the good behavior up here will get our attention. All right, so ignoring is not always bad. But what is not a good form of behavior management is timeout. Timeout is a form of ignoring, but it doesn't give children the opportunity to see what they did wrong and what is expected of them. Okay? The only time timeout should be used is when it is a safety issue. Okay? So what that means is, say you have a child that bit another. Well, you have to take time for the child that got bitten to go wash it with soapy water and write an accident report. So you cannot deal with the child that bit him yet. So you would put him in timeout just for a brief little bit so you could deal with the health and safety part. And then you would go back to the child that bit and say, I see you bit your friend. Why did you bite? And then you follow up from there. Okay? All right. We're going to skip difference between guidance and discipline because we've talked about that. All right. So what does guidance techniques look like? What do these things look like when we're managing behavior? Okay, we've already talked about positive reinforcement. We've talked about attention, that we give children attention when they do good things. But when they do not do what we like, we ignore, unless it's a safety issue. Okay, timeout is only used for safety, so I'm going to just cross that one out. I do not want students, I don't want you guys going and doing timeout because it does not change the behavior. It simply stops it. Okay, so I'm going to put this on here so you can remember. Does not change just stops. Alright, one that's very widely used, actually these two are probably the most widely used right here. Prevention, that means you stop it before it happens. One example of this is in toddler classrooms, you have 2 of everything. Okay? Everything. That means children don't even get a chance to fight because there's plenty of it. Okay? Redirection means when you see children acting up, you simply redirect them. You bring them, you ask them to do something else. For instance, if housekeeping is full and they all want to be in housekeeping, then you can pull a brand new toy out or a puzzle they don't do all the time and say, look what I've got over here. You redirect what they are doing. Okay? Discussion is simply talking about the problem and the behavior, and problem solving is finding a solution to the problem. Alright, things that affect children's behavior is probably one of the biggest ones that's going to affect you. Is guidelines. You've got to give them guidelines. You've got to tell them what you expect and follow through. So big, you guys. Do not tell them that they can't run inside and then let them run. And just tell them over and over, don't run. Actually follow through. If they're running, then you give them a consequence. If I keep seeing you run, I'm going to have to ask you to come sit at the table until you can show me your walking feet. Follow through. That is the biggest thing. Okay? Health problems can affect their behavior. For instance, if they are struggling with something like ADHD or they have a special need, that can affect it. Individual temperament, meaning that individual child, how they are. Okay? The child's family. For instance, if a child's family doesn't sit at the table at dinner, they eat in front of the TV, then we can't expect them to just come into school and sit at the table with good manners. We've got to teach them. Okay? And then finally, attachment. All right. The biggest part of this, dealing with aggression, that I want you to see is that prevention is huge. Okay? Prevention. Stopping it before it starts. Especially, I mean, we have a lot of aggressive kids out here. It's never okay, and it never should be ignored, but it can be mostly prevented, okay? You should always be working on acceptable behaviors and giving them that positive attention. And what this means by minimizing environmental factors, that means, is this child maybe having a hard time sharing? Well, then you can prevent that in their environment by putting plenty of what they like out there so they don't have to worry about sharing yet. And another environmental factor might be if this child is constantly trying to run inside. You might change the room around so there's no place to run. You have to kind of go through centers to get around. Okay, so you minimize things in the environment. Alright, so I'm not sure if you guys can see my panel with all my tools yet, so I'm going to try to leave this one with the tool panel without moving it to see how it looks. Alright, so last thing in social behaviors is that we have to work with families. We partner with them, okay? We are a link. Okay, here's the biggest word here. We're partners with family, y'all. We're there to help them, but we won't be able to help anything if we don't know the root of anything. The family tells us that, okay? Alright, so I hope this gave you a better understanding than just looking at the PowerPoint. I welcome feedback. I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about this. And I will talk to you guys on Thursday. Study for the exam and email me if you need me. Bye.